All right, we are live. Welcome back to this special edition of the O Bro Show, a show where two brothers with the name of O host a show. And for the first time, we are joined by our esteemed guest, a distinguished gentleman, Mr. PF Jung. Give it up for him.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
We're super excited to have you. Seth, do you have any?
I feel like Netanyahu. I feel like Netanyahu in addressing the U.S. Congress as you just clap for me like peasants.
I mean,
it's great.
Maybe
That's
you could.
crazy.
If we'd have to give you a standing ovation, what was it, like 80 times?
Yeah. And
All
you
right,
have to.
well,
One of
If
us would
I
have to be
killed
missing
several,
to
if I killed several thousand people, then you'd have to come cover for me. But that
yeah,
separate issue.
there you go.
there we go.
Yeah.
I think I'm getting a little bit of an echo. It might be from you, Seth.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. I think I heard it at the
Not getting
beginning,
anything.
but I think it's.
Yeah.
I can't hear
Okay,
anything right
we're
now.
fine.
Hello?
Cool.
Stop me.
Yeah, we hear you, Seth. You're good. Yeah, in tonight's episode, we plan on interrogating PF Jung to question his philosophy, also to discover if Seth and I should become Enlightened Centrists ourselves and join,
Or if you already are.
or if
Or
we
if we
already are.
Yeah.
Yeah. If not, we'll have to declare war on Paul and his community. But we're so small that we have to wage war unfair. It'd be like guerrilla warfare. That'd be the strategy.
Like domestic terrorists.
because-
All right, that sounds good.
On the online politics. That's how we'd have to do it.
Yeah.
Paul, I also have to say you received an A-tier ranking in our recent live stream where we ranked
True.
online political streamers and really just figures. We did everybody, and you received an A-tier. So
Okay.
I'd like to personally present you the O Bro Show stamp of approval.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
So
well,
congratulations.
I appreciate it. I reject your stamp of approval because I believe you put JJ McCullough in S tier, so it's completely worthless.
You watched it.
Yeah,
So-
that's he pre-watched it. That's good.
I did.
No,
I
that's-
did
watched
see.
it.
I did see some of your hit piece, but yeah.
You know,
The second stream.
it's still there. It'll be like a YouTube play button. We'll send it in the mail, and it might get lost,
That's
and
fair.
then we'll see what happens.
That works.
Seth, do you have anything? I want you to engage. You're half of the show. 50% of this ownership here.
That's true. I don't have much to say right now. I'm just looking forward to just asking. Well, I'm more into philosophy than Josh is, so I'm really interested to pick your brain on a lot of that.
Okay, I'll enjoy talking to you more because you're clearly smarter than in that case.
That's true.
Because Josh, you've come on my stream once or twice?
Twice. I'm the big Christian guy.
That's right. And then Seth, have you haven't seen much of my content, so you don't know that much about where I stand?
I've watched it. I just haven't hopped
I
on.
put
your
him
stream at
on.
all.
I put him on the way.
All right, Josh. All right, now you're back in
So
the
I'm back.
graces.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, that's fair.
I was
Okay.
gonna try to join the last two streams, but you were getting bombarded by DG like Destiny's fans. It seemed like.
Yeah, it's at the point now where when I put the link in, it fills up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Which is a nice problem to have.
That's a good problem to have.
But yeah. So no, I wrote some questions down for you guys too, by the way, so we can get to
Oh,
those at some
man.
point.
We'll
Yeah.
leave
Counter
time for a
arguments.
question answer. I guess I
Yeah.
gotta put on my hat now because I have
Yeah,
to be
that's-
able to dominate this conversation.
It's very cute.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. This is my bit for the
Enjoy
podcast today.
the past 15 years of supremacy.
I
But
will.
like all
It's gonna
empires.
stay that way too.
Like
I mean,
Israel?
love.
Yeah. Right.
Seth, do you want to? I mean, we might as well start with the philosophy because I know that that's going to be interesting, and then we'll keep the boring political talk to
Sure.
me. So we'll start on a high note.
Sure. Well, first, I guess, Paul, if you want to just what is your overall philosophical stance, so I don't straw man you on anything?
What's my overall philosophical stance?
Yeah, I guess your
Worldview. How do
yeah
you
the
see the world?
worldview the worldview that you hold to the strongest. or if there's like some interlapping between.
That's
some.
fair. I have a strong urge to answer ironically, but I think I need to tone down the irony as of late. So I'll give more direct answers than I might normally.
You can answer ironically to Seth this whole time.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll
that works
alternate.
okay. Yeah.
What is my well? I believe that we all have a responsibility to make the world a better place. I believe the more privilege you have in the real sense, not the racial sense, the more privilege you have, the more responsibility you have to try and multiply that privilege for others. And I believe, I guess, philosophically, that the correct opinion on any, or the correct perspective on any issue, no matter how controversial, no matter what it is attained by synthesizing the right-wing perspective, quote unquote, and the left-wing perspective. To be right-wing, to be only right-wing is wrong, and to be only left-wing is wrong. It's like driving a car and trying to navigate the ship of state, but only being able to turn right or only being able to turn left. And that seems very odd and foolish to me. So the meme that I am manufacturing right now is Enlightened Centrism, which is that term's already been out there. It's like a slur for people who are in the center, like, I think both sides are bad. Oh, look at you, you're an enlightened centrist. And it's like, I want to turn that around on its face and lead with, yeah, of course I'm an enlightened centrist. The freaks on the left and the freaks on the right are both morons, to put it simply, although they are in possession of some truth. And I would equate enlightened centrism with radical centrism, because I think you need to have a lot of radical perspectives on things. And I think the best way to defeat the freak left and freak right is to rob them of their good talking points. So every radical is empowered by having by occupying some sliver of truth. And so the best thing to do to fight back against the radicals is to occupy their territory, so to speak, their true territory. So yeah, I would say that's my worldview in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Now, what's relevant is I would say I'm very much influenced by maps of meaning. That's probably the foundational. That's the most real, quote unquote, philosophical text that I'm immersed in, even though I technically haven't read it. I have listened to the first 10 hours of the audiobook, and I've watched upwards of probably now several, I don't know, it's not more than 2,000, but it's at least 1,000 hours of Jordan Peterson's lectures and interviews and whatnot, which is not the, him destroying feminist compilation stuff. Yeah. It's him talking about
it's the real stuff.
Yeah. Neurology and how the, neurology maps onto psychology and philosophy and linguistics and all that stuff. So that's where I'm coming from.
That's fair. Could you break down what you meant by when you said better for everybody? Because that is like a subjective view now with the left and the right, of like, we have two sides, like you pointed out, of the left is saying, well, equity is better for all. And the right is saying, no, free markets or justice is better for all.
They would disagree on how to get to better. I when I use the word better, I kind of stake an axiomatic claim, and I appeal to people's intuitions and say, I'm not going to explain what a more flourishing society is. We all can imagine that, and it's very easy to imagine when you look out the street and see homeless people. And it's like, well, if there were less homeless drug addicts on the street and there were people and there was infrastructure to help them, we could say that that's objectively better. That's a more objectively flourishing society. And if people want to get into the moral relativism stuff, it's like, well, how do you know that that would be better? I would say, you're exactly the type of person that wastes everyone's time and makes philosophy seem like a bunch of useless nerd shit, which it often is.
See, Seth, that's what I've been saying.
Yeah, Josh and I were arguing about this last night a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's I part of the reason that I am as ironic as I am is because there's certainly a part of me that recognizes that, a lot of people, like, as soon as you say the word philosophy, for a lot of people that's not accessible because they just they're not interested in it. They just don't have the capability to kind of understand a lot of stuff. And I think it's really annoying and strange when people take pride in the distance they can put between themselves and others, like intellectually. Like, oh, I'm very much into philosophy. It's like, okay, even to the average person who's not even that judgmental, it's just like, okay, well, okay, you're now in this ivory tower sort of right off the bat, and it's like, I think obviously I think philosophy is very valuable, and I spend most of my time philosophizing, I guess, engaged in that kind of thinking. But I think there's a responsibility that people who are capable of, kind of immersing themselves in these ideas to not think that makes them better than people, which I certainly used to think as a defense mechanism, in junior high. And, oh, well, the reason I don't have as many friends or that other people is because I'm smarter than these kids. I care about politics. I'm in 6th grade. I care about politics. These losers care about sports,
Yeah.
which is what I actually, that was the mindset. And it's like,
yeah.
And so in part it's a attack on a part of me that I recognize as, foolish and insecure. But there also is an aspect of like, well, you also shouldn't feel you shouldn't feel ashamed for being interested in ideas. That's another problem that people have. Is like, well, I don't even want to bring up interesting things I'm interested in because other people will be like, oh, shut up, here you go, politics again, which certainly happened to me as well. So I don't know. I think you can strike a proper balance, I would say.
That's fair.
Yeah, and part of Seth and I's disagreement regarding philosophy, not that it's not interesting, and I think grounding your worldview or discussing kind of where your fundamental beliefs stem from is important. But when it comes to, like you were saying, Paul, solving problems or things like that, we end up somewhat just appealing to a common set of understandings anyway. And so when somebody says, well, I identify as this philosophical understanding and I identify as this, and they discuss the world, it does feel like sometimes it takes you away from the heart or the heart of the matter. Like, what's actually at stake here? What's the problem?
Yeah, I have a friend. This had to be, I don't know, high school or something like that. But he went to college for philosophy, and he would often talk about like this existentialism stuff. And I remember like listening to him thinking this is complete fucking bullshit. Like anyone who has the time to sit here and go, what is the relationship between the conscious entity and the glass that sits before us? It's like, you are a fool because there are problems right in front of you all around the world, and you choose to spend your time wasting your time on a question like that. Now, in hindsight, I realize that those are, in some sense, the most important questions because all other problems, well, not all other, but a lot of our problems stem from not having the right answers to those questions. But yeah, if you cannot, that's why I'm a big fan of pragmatism. If you cannot connect, if the truth of what you're saying does not change things in the real world with any practicality, it's totally irrelevant. Like the whole free will discourse in my mind is like, it's entirely semantic. It means whether to answer yes or to answer no changes nothing about society. Same with, do we live in a simulation? It's like, well, if we do, the rules of the simulation are still the same. The pain I feel, simulated or not, still sucks objectively. So it's like, so that's what I think.
Yeah, Seth. I mean, me connecting it to Seth and I's philosophy, I mean, it's really close to our theology. And I'm not going to dig too deep in it, but Paul from the Bible spent some time talking about how you can do exactly what we're talking about. You can get so confused on philosophies, or I follow this person's theology, and then you miss the message of Jesus. So Paul, even biblical text, is reflective of this idea that you're talking about, Paul, of that we can spend so much time in this like headspace that we don't actually apply what is before us, which I think is the fear to avoid.
And in my defense of why I am more into philosophy than Josh, I guess, to put some defense up to it, is I've seen in my life, the more I've gotten into philosophy, where I did struggle at the time of kind of like getting like what Paul was talking about, like philosophizing about the stupid stuff that we don't really need to as much. But in the last year, it's really helped me find a motivation to really just push through hard circumstances, but also to want to push towards a goal where I can help people more in the future.
The other thing I would say is also depends on what you mean by philosophy, because it's like, first, like anytime you have a perspective, it's a like Mike Tyson has a philosophy on things, right? It's like Mike Tyson's not reading Nietzsche or whatever, something like that. So it's thinking deeply.
People up.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a philosophy of fists. But like thinking deeply about the world, we're not even thinking just thinking about your perspective. Like that's considered like philosophy, theology, all politics in some sense is philosophical.
Yeah.
You know, even if it's well, who should we vote for, Kamala or Biden? It's like, well, you're philosophizing about, well, what are their worldviews? What kind of world are they going to put in all this stuff? Or a philosophy of, just practical, like what's the best route to victory if I'm a Kamala Harris campaign manager? I have to have so that's the word philosophy is very broad, which is like, which is why, yeah, I don't tell people I'm into philosophy per se, because it's just like, I just think it means it's like, I think about that. I enjoy discussing, complex topics, and I enjoy hearing where people come from and whatnot. And philosophy and psychology are also, hand in hand. So,
yeah.
And I'm gonna steal. I mean, Seth, you go give a question right after me, because I could just keep going. But Seth,
right.
Paul, with your interest and, I mean, you talked about how from an early age you've been into these subjects, or at least thinking about these things. How did that all walk us through? How that all kind of coalesced behind a figure like Jordan Peterson, and his framing and thinking of the world?
Well, I encountered Jordan Peterson, the Kathy Newman. Well, actually, no. The first interview I saw Jordan Peterson, he was just some interview he did on Canadian TV. This was after he had the whole Bill C-16 thing where he said, "I'd rather starve than call someone, he, him, or whatever, or they, them." And I remember I watched like 10 minutes of the interview. I'm like, this is just some grumpy old man, and I don't give a shit about it, whatever. And then it was like 6 months later, then he had the Kathy Newman interview, which is a legendary interview.
Blew up. Yep.
And I was like, who the fuck is this guy? And then I started watching the lectures and shit. And so it was entirely unexpected, because like I said, I had the attitude I had towards like Nietzsche and philosophy and all that. And Jordan Peterson cites Nietzsche and all that stuff. So it was more of just, connecting the dots of, well, the reason it's important to understand, what does it mean to be conscious, or what is consciousness in relationship to other people? It's like, well, the answers to that determine then how you act, and determine whether or not your actions are going to be successful or not, right? Like aligning yourself with the truth. Sounds like some mystical, metaphorical idea, but
yeah,
it's a very technical thing. It's like reality is structured in a certain way. Truth is a heuristic to operate through reality. When you deviate from that, then you sort of, you twist the fabric of reality. It's like a ruler, plastic ruler, that when you bend back, it snaps back. So anytime you deviate from the truth, you're essentially putting negative potential energy into reality that will come back at you. But that negative potential energy is not physical energy. It's psychological. It's all that stuff. So it's kind of very, super complicated and all that. But that's how I would say, and I was
right
also
guy, right time.
Yeah, right guy, right time. And I was in college. This was, I think it was junior year. I think. And I was, I was super. I had a really rough time my freshman year of college. I was super depressed. By junior year, I'd more or less come out of it, but I was still sort of on the, what am I doing with my life? And then I took some psychedelic substances, of course, in legal circumstances, because everything illegal. And this is like a month after listening to the Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris conversation about truth and all that, which I think is the most interesting type stuff, like epistemology and all that. And I had a manila folder, and I suspect none of you guys have done psychedelics because you're good men of God. But if you ever take acid and you have a manila folder and you have a mechanical pencil, the feeling of putting a mechanical pencil to a manila folder, it's like oh, this is what God felt creating Adam, and I wrote down something on the folder. I think, what was it? It was oh fuck, I forget now. I wrote some phrase. I think it was something
This
like
is the riddle of the universe, Paul. We need to figure
yeah.
this out.
Well, no, I wrote something to the effect of I want to be a communicator or something like that, because I hadn't even chosen my major yet. I knew I was going to do business of some kind, but I didn't know what I was doing, post college or whatever, other than get a job. But but then it was that, and I was like, oh, this is I realize now this is what I want to do. I want to communicate. I want to talk and whatnot. And then it wasn't until the pandemic that I actually started the YouTube channel. But yeah, certainly, exactly. And now I'm here. So
talking to two Packers fans.
I know it's been a downward trajectory for the past 3 months.
3 months.
Past,
culminating with
20
this.
minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seth, do you have another philosophical related question?
When are you guys going to grill me on all the shit that you think I'm wrong about? Because you were a lot more. You're a lot more quick to go. I think Paul's wrong on this when I'm not here. So
well,
tell me right now.
I mean, if you want to get into it, we can.
Also, it's your show. If you have questions that
it's probably more interesting, and we want to be interesting. And I was talking to Seth. One of the things that I was kicking myself about coming on your streams about, I was like, I was so nice that I forgot that this guy needs content, and so we need to be the content,
right? Well, I just generally speaking, I do enjoy the questions. I don't get interviewed that often, so it's.
Yeah, we turned the tables on you.
Well, it's actually it does force me to communicate in a way that's not me being ironic to the camera. But I will say the most interesting conversations are with people who I disagree with on the things we disagree about, because that's when you learn.
Okay,
I agree. Seth, if you want, still go with one philosophical, maybe you disagree with him on something related to that.
I'm not fully convinced that the best answer for society is the true middle between the two political parties currently.
I agree.
And so I think when you say to try to balance the parties, I think it's almost like a losing game, because you're playing the game of, okay, if one side goes too extreme, well, now the middle is shifted to that side. So how do you combat that? Because don't you then have to just forfeit being a centrist and kind of lean one side if another is just going way too far?
Yeah, I've never considered myself a centrist. I consider myself an enlightened centrist for the specific reason.
All right.
Yeah, the answer is not it's not in the middle, because first off, you could argue there's the conceptual middle. So it's not what percentage of people believe what. It's if you arrayed out all the positions people could have logically and just arrayed them on a line, and you take the most far right and most far left position, then in some sense it is kind of more in the middle, I guess, theoretically, but it's all relative to each other. So it's complicated. I think that sometimes the radical right is correct and sometimes the radical left is correct. So you go with the truth. That's what's fundamentally. Here's how we determine what we should believe. What is the most true? And how do we determine what's the most true? Well, when we act this truth out, when we live as if this truth is true, who has the best outcomes in life, right? And so anytime a narcissistic person who has all kinds of personal issues has a meltdown publicly, which happens all the time, certainly in the online politics space, or in not even just online politics. Yeah, I'm sure you can think of many examples. It's like, well,
Destiny for the past couple weeks.
Destiny is one. Destiny's the stuff you said about the firefighter is like beyond sociopathic, in my opinion. And it's like, so then it's like, okay, if Destiny's going to live his life that way, what will that do for his personal well-being? And like, you can, if I had to make predictions, I would say it's not very good, in my opinion. I don't think Destiny has a very strong, close-knit community of people he trusts because of how he chooses to live his life. Now, everything, it's all cost benefit. Obviously, he has a lot of advantages that come from that. But yeah, it's reality has built-in self-correcting mechanisms.
When you go off of
psychologically as well.
when you go off of outcomes, couldn't a lie be a good outcome or lead to a good outcome, but you're withholding a truth?
So theoretically, but I don't believe that reality is set up that works. It's like saying, if we could go back in time and kill Hitler, would that be the right decision? It's like that question presupposes that reality involves you being able to go back in time. And I would, as far as I know, can't do that. You create all these sort of contradictions. You get the multiverse type shit. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So on the lie thing, it's like, this is the Jordan Peterson idea, and I believe this is correct. This is when he says no one gets away with anything. I think reality is set up so that anytime you engage in deceit, and it gets nuanced because, if I'm holding a surprise party for you and I tell you I'm going to the grocery store, when in reality I'm going to your surprise party, that's not really a lie because you're not deceiving that person for your own gain.
Sure.
It's an act of love, fundamentally.
Yeah.
And then there's also other kind of borderline nuances where, like, what if you're an undercover cop? Like, you have to lie, and you have to lie in a very deep way of like, I'm going to earn this person's trust. I'm going to like meet his kids or whatever, and then I'm going to fucking kill him or whatever. It's like, arguably that's a net positive for society. I think the way that reality is structured is like, that's sort of like, it's like the divers who went into Chernobyl, with the radiation going and like had to plug it up or whatever. It's like, that was the right thing from society's perspective, but they paid the price. There's no way to go up to that much radiation and not pay although I think they lived, but it's principle of going up to the radiation. There's a price. I think lying inherently causes negative consequences for the person, at least. Now, if you say, well, what about, like, what could a lie not have positive effects on a broad scale? It's like, well, I sort of would agree with that. The whole Jesus Christ rising from the dead kind of falls into that category, in my opinion. How do you guys feel about that?
All right. That's spicy. I mean, we can get into it. I want to...
all my questions are Jesus related and Christian related. So, but
you are the biggest Christian that we know.
I don't have the hubris that you gentlemen do to say that I know for certain that God's nature is this way and that Jesus literally rose from the dead. That seems too far-fetched for me.
What's your definition of faith, Paul?
What's my definition of faith?
Correct.
Believing
so when Seth and I say we have faith in God and that the Bible is true, what do you think that means?
What do I think that means? I think that you know that there is no way to produce the evidence. Like, if I could tell you whether or not my wall is painted white or black, but you choose to believe it anyway.
No. So I would argue that this is what a false society has defined, has co-opted the biblical definition of what faith means.
Okay.
So our belief in faith, like when I say I have faith in God, it's a confidence, a full-hearted confidence based upon the evidence that I have seen. Now, can I say with 1000% certainty that, Jesus Christ rise from the dead? No, but I have faith that he did based upon the evidence that I've seen and the personal experiences that I've had. That goes in tandem. So an example of this, an analogy of this is a Christian, when they say they have faith, it's not a blind leap of faith. It's more like when you say, Paul, I have faith that when I sit in my office chair, it's going to hold me up. Well, why do you have faith in this? Well, it's based upon the object. It's based upon your experience with that. And so that we have that faith in the object being God. And that's why this also is Christians misdefine what faith is as well. Our faith is as strong as it is because of the God with whom we have placed it in as well. And so the subject really matters, and it grounds your faith as well. So
Do you
what do you
guys
think of that?
do you believe that the Earth is 6,000 years old?
It's so funny. We were
Fun,
just
fun
going on about that.
Yeah, fun conversation.
Which of you believe it? Which of you don't?
No, we were definitely raised that way.
Young Earth creationism.
Young Earth
Okay,
creationism to a
and I
T,
mean this in all
biblical.
seriousness. I'm not trying to make fun of you. Obviously, I don't believe that, but I'm curious.
Yeah.
What do you guys believe?
We are. Well, I would say I'm not on that side. So the difference is going to be like how, and we're figuring out how to do. We're going back and understanding Genesis and its meaning and its intent and what that means. But also, I think the evidence is overwhelming that the Earth is really, really, really old. And so there's some biblical alternatives to that, Paul. One of them could be a mature Earth that God created, meaning, God didn't create a baby Adam; He created a fully developed Adam. And so, a Christian theory is that God could have developed in an instant a very, very old Earth that is fully developed. So that's a potential that you could have, is that God
fair. Okay.
could have created that. So
from within our reality and within our perceptions, it's functionally the same.
Correct.
Okay, I like that.
Potentially, yeah. So that's how you could bridge the gap between science is telling us that this is millions and millions of years old. That could technically still be true, and it could also still be.
Okay, that's fair. What about
6,000
evolution?
years.
Do you guys believe in evolution?
I mean, yes, but also I haven't done the
That's
time,
fair.
Paul, to dig into it enough. I'm getting to the point. I will shout him out. Inspiring Philosophy is a really good Christian apologist who is a creation
theistic evolutionist.
Evolution. Yes, theistic evolutionist is the term, and he gives so many arguments and puts really how evolution fit within an understanding of Genesis. And so that has really opened up my mind. And
I would call Jordan Peterson a theistic evolutionist. That's what I am. I believe that
I would call Jordan Peterson a yapper when it comes to the Bible.
Yeah, I know that's fair. I think that I don't see how it's incompatible with the idea that God nowhere in Genesis does it explain the mechanism by which God did any of his stuff. Like when they say God created Adam, and then he took a rib from Adam and created Eve. It's okay, that's fair.
Yep.
What was the actual mechanism? Was there a hand in Black and White, the video game, or Mario, where you fight the giant hand?
Yeah.
Did a hand come down and rip the fucking like in Indiana Jones when he sticks it?
Right.
It's it doesn't explain what the mechanism is, and so especially with a Genesis account, it's like, why could God not have used the process of evolution to produce, the reality that we see?
Yeah,
that's
what
I believe.
I don't want to.
Yeah. I would say it's very hard because majority of at least American Christians, they're very dispensationalist, so they take everything literally, basically. They're very literal in their readings of the Bible. And that's how Josh and I were raised as well. We were raised in a very literal household, but we've both gone back and forth on our parents recently on this because I hold to the belief
which
that
literally stemmed from a political movement, Paul, like that.
Correct.
There was the American Christian
dispensation.
Schofield. Schofield is very modern. That doesn't go back into church history from their understanding of Genesis, but American Christianity really from the 60s onward, their push against secularism was waged in the schools, and the target they had was evolution, because they wanted to make an argument that evolution is the reason for the secularization and progressive nature of society. And so they kind of just picked a boogeyman, and evolution is the one who it ended up being. And so they took this literal creationist reading of the Bible, and they said, you have to teach this because there aren't even playing grounds. In my reading now, I understand that there isn't even a published scientific journal at all to even prove the findings of a creationist perspective of how the world began. There's theories that are positive, young Earth creationism, but even also just creationism.
Yeah,
there's Yeah, there's like
Yeah, I
there
get what
could
you're
be a
saying.
creator.
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
But
Okay, well,
it's,
you guys are much more aligned. We are much more aligned than it would be if you guys believe the Earth was 6,000 years old. So I'm glad that that's not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is very much. What's your problem with Jordan Peterson then? Because this is clearly this is straight out of Jordan Peterson, reconciling science and religion.
So I feel like Jordan Peterson is grifting off of the book that I ground my life.
And I just want to be clear here. Hold on, I want to be clear here. Pre-Daily Wire Jordan Peterson.
Oh, you can't put me in that pigeonhole.
Post Daily Wire Jordan Peterson is not in this conversation.
He's not the same person. No, I can agree with
think,
this.
Okay, but for a point of consensus, do you think post Daily Wire Peterson is at least somewhat grifting off the Bible? I think some of his
post Daily Wire Peterson is let's see. I'm going to choose my words carefully here.
No, go in. Come on.
I think that he is lying to himself. I think that he is frightened of the situation he has put himself in, which is he has aligned himself with the Daily Wire, and he aligns himself with people who, for example, have a very close relationship with Netanyahu. And I regard that entire exercise as very immoral. And I think Jordan Peterson knows it's immoral, and he knows all the insane shit that goes on in the extreme religious Judaism, the extreme religious Jewish traditions that are increasingly dominating politics over there. And he is unable to speak his truth, which by his own words is a form of a lie. So I think, as we said from the beginning, you cannot get away with anything. You cannot lie and get away with it. He is sitting there silent when he knows he should be saying something, but he is not. And so he is falling apart psychologically because of that.
Do you think his daughter and his wife are actually Catholic?
I don't know. What does it mean to be actually Catholic?
Okay.
Take the Eucharist.
Yeah. I'm sure. I do. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't. I suspect they go to church and all that. I don't think they're lying. In fact, I don't think he like people say he lies and like Candace Owens brings up the apple cider thing. That is very odd. You know the apple cider thing?
I don't know if I know
that.
He
said, go look up just Jordan Peterson apple cider, and he talks about how he had a sip of apple cider and he couldn't sleep for a month. He's like, I didn't sleep for a month. And it wasn't like it was as if I didn't sleep for. He was like, I literally didn't sleep for a month. It's like, that's just not physically possible. So what are you talking about? But my thing is, I believe the philosophy that he articulated pre-Daily Wire Peterson was it's so obvious to me that he's internalized it. That's like he's gonna lie about apple cider of all things. Like his whole thing is never lie, never lie, never lie. And the one thing that he like goes hard on is how long he can sleep. That seems odd to me. I don't know. I think he's a strange gentleman, that's for sure. Is he grifting off the Bible? I think he is rectifying all the flaws of religious fundamentalism that you have correctly identified so far in this conversation, like the denial of evolution. How do you feel about that?
But at the same time, though, I'm guessing you've seen the Alex O'Connor interview with him, right?
Mm-hmm.
The one that blew up.
Yeah, and then when he said, "I suspect he probably rose," if the camera was there,
probably.
How do you rectify that?
He's taken a lot of psychedelics. Hold for laughter. Now that you're done laughing, there's absolutely a connection between psychedelics and religious spiritual experience. And seeing as neither of you have taken them, I have much respect and pity for you at the same time.
We're high on the Holy Spirit.
I think most people who study this in depth very clearly identify the degree to which these substances were involved in almost all of our founding myths. There's some argument that it played a part in the rapid development of our brain. That can't be proven, but Jordan Peterson's taken 7 grams of mushrooms, I think 3 times. Now, the most I've ever taken in one sitting is like 2 grams, I think. He's taken triple that or more. I would. That's not. I wouldn't go there. That's too
This
fucking
man
close.
is
Crazy.
This man has walked with God.
I mean, legitimately. So, I think when you are getting to the most fundamental questions, like, did Jesus literally rise from the dead? Is God literally an entity? You know, you're. That's why that's a famous meme of him saying, like, "What do you mean do? What do you mean you? What do you mean believe?" It's like, I happily mock that in my Jordan Peterson Champion Spotlight, but I know I'm fully sympathetic to what he's saying because it is that level of complex in terms of like, what is reality as such? It's like, I don't fucking know. Which is why I'm so hesitant to stake my claim in any sort of religion.
Yeah, Peterson has decided to treat the Bible as holistically fiction. And so any truths that he's
Correct.
pulling from that
It
is
is.
starting from that premise. But no, that is not how the Bible was treated since its inception and how it was treated, like passed down. And so he is a blip in human history of a novel reading of scripture that people that have read the scriptures and study them don't have that understanding.
Interesting. I would say it's the exact opposite, where the thing that he's pushing back against is the atheist materialist reading of the Bible. Oh, the Bible is just the Bible said, what's an example? The Earth was created in 6,000 or whatever. The way they do that, I think, is they trace the lineages and they add up all the years, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the atheist will say, well, clearly the Bible's a bunch of bullshit because they say the Earth is 6,000 years old. We know evolution is real. Therefore, we can reject everything. It's like, that's a childish reading. That's a smart 13-year-old atheist reading is what Peterson would say. And I think what Peterson is doing is actually integrating all of the past interpretations and maybe not so much as on a theological lens, which is certainly probably a flaw, you know, to the degree that everyone's limited. But he is contextualizing the Bible in its historical, in its psychological, in its evolutionary context and all that. And that is much more compelling to me. Even though I guess I'm not. Go ahead.
Is there any like modern discovery that you think outlaw, like, because we covered the old Earth thing, right? And so is there any discovery of modern science or whatever that if you took a literal approach, now obviously it's been said the Bible is not meant to be, they're not all in the same genre. It's a library. It's not all one book by the same authors. So some of them are not meant to be taken literally.
How do you know when to take it literally and when not to?
Authorial intent.
Oh, here we go.
Context.
This was my Christian national. When you guys made that hit piece about my Christian nationalism video, this is what I was getting at, which I tend to fully exploit right now. You guys, because you talked about dispensation theology. What is dispensation? Don't give me the whole fucking thing, and sorry if I can swear. But what is dispensation theology in like a sentence or two?
Seth, you brought it up, so I'm gonna. No, I'm hanging you out to dry. You brought up dispensationalism.
Well, I've heard of it, but I want to know from your end what it is.
From my end, Josh knows more about this than I do because he's read more into it than I do, or I have been able to. But my understanding of it is it's usually correlated to a very literal sense of reading the Bible as a whole book. So everything is literal, and to question it at all is like heresy.
Okay, and we agree that's clearly ridiculous and holds back Christianity as a whole.
Yeah. Okay. Interpreting the Bible is incredibly important. Okay, and there are bad interpretations of the Bible.
Sure, but okay. So now, just to help. I'm not saying this to convince you. I'm saying this to help you understand how I see it.
Yep.
What I am to you, you are to the dispensationalists. Yeah.
We're probably worse to dispensationalists, honestly.
Because you're traitors.
They hate us. Yeah, they hate us.
No, because we still hold to all of the fundamental, and also we're not forsaking a literal understanding of Scripture. We just disagree that the literal understanding of Scripture, they don't own that. Does that make sense? So, like,
okay,
you do have to
believe that people who deny evolution are wrong.
Correct. Yeah, from the evidence that I've seen. Yeah.
Now, you just said dispensation believes if you deviate from literal interpretation, it's a form of heresy, right?
That's my understanding. I'm not sure.
Is that I mean, is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm
you're heretics to other people, to a lot of Christians.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We're heretics to Muslims too.
And I'm a heretic to you guys, right? To some degree.
I mean, yeah.
Right. So we're all heretics to someone else. So the question is, who's the real heretic?
Well,
it's a trick question because it's, we get into the weeds of like the theology.
Yeah. And we covered this in our Peterson video that Scripture has to be the anchor that you start with.
Yeah, but what happens when you get in different interpretations of Scripture? Like, for example, the intelligent.
You use your reason and logic.
And then what happens when reason and logic puts you at different conclusions? For example, I do not have faith that reason and logic will lead you to the correct conclusion all the time. Reason and logic are tools, and they're imperfect tools. So you can never say reason and logic will get us to the truth, assuming we have all the right information. That will never work.
Correct. Which is why you should be a Christian, because the Bible does say
I'm a cultural Christian.
that the Holy Spirit will divinely inspire God's word, so you do understand it with right interpretation. So and we can say completely with a biblical worldview and an understanding of Scripture that we very well could, as genuine believers, have a right understanding and interpretation of Scripture because the Spirit is interpreting it for us.
I unironically believe that about myself, in that I believe there is a God. I believe that Christianity has a very good approximation of the true nature of God, but it's definitely not final. It's definitely not literal. Ergo, Earth is not created in 6,000 years. That's number one. Now you would say, well, the Bible doesn't actually say that. It's like, if it didn't say that, the dispensationalists wouldn't be the mainstream branch in Christianity, or at least if it couldn't be reasonably interpreted that way. Because I'm sure, and I know, that there are many reasonable, good, decent dispensationalist Christians, but they're wrong about evolution. So it's like, how do we adjudicate that? Well, we can argue, here's the interpretation, here's my logical interpretation, here's your logical interpretation. And I step back and say, well, it's not about arguing, it's go live that worldview out. So here's a specific thing that we probably disagree on. It's like homosexuality. It's like, okay, well, if we treat homosexual, let's say we take the Bible literally on homosexuality, where having gay sex will send you to hell. It's a sin. You will go to hell. And you cannot, I'm sure there's all kinds of nuances around, like, can I accept Jesus as my savior and still be sinning actively, knowing it's a sin? It's like, well, some people say yes, some people say no, you never actually did it. It's hypocritical, whatever. Point is, I would say the endless amount of abuse of people who are gay by religious institutions are pragmatic evidence that is not the proper path, because it's not a matter of logical interpretation versus logical interpretation. It's look at the fruits. By your fruits you shall know them. And I know it's heresy for a cultural Christian to be quoting the Bible, especially to fundamentalists like you guys. But I do believe, but that's like how I don't adjudicate religious disputes by logical interpretation. I say, let's look at the evidence. Let's see what the outcomes are of believing this. And, we'll evaluate it from there. How's that sound?
Yeah. And I guess my pushback would also be, I think that there's a false understanding of Christian religion, that there's far more agreement of core biblical interpretation than people oftentimes give credit to. And so there are, like, how old the earth is yeah, there's a lot of nuance. There's a lot of disagreement among all sorts of Christians. But in terms of, was Jesus born? Did he die, rise again? That's a core fundamental Christian belief.
Yeah, Nicene Creed,
for
right?
all throughout Christian history, if you didn't hold to the gospel, let's just say it for short, you were thrown out. And so
that doesn't hold on. Okay, first off, two things. Number one, I don't believe that's true. The Gnostics were a much bigger sect of Christianity than what you just described as letting on. And two, getting thrown out doesn't mean you're wrong. That just means the people in power happen to throw you out. How do you know the Gnostic Christians were not correct, or that the Gnostic Gospels should not have been included in the canonical Bible? Why should we assume that a group of humans who assembled the current Bible that we use, which even that is questionable of like what exactly was the process that went into that, why should we assume that their assemblage of that Bible at that time is infallible?
What do you mean by infallible?
That it's the word that we can then say this is the word of God.
Does for something to be infallible, is that a necessary thing for it to be the word of God?
I would think so. I don't know. Otherwise you're just approaching it like you would accuse me of approaching it, which is this is a nice story, but it's not like fundamentally true.
No,
if it's
because
the word of God,
again,
it's true.
Yeah, because I think this is a very American understanding of the Bible, where
I know you're a fucking communist because you got that Pakistan second head on. This is how
a lot of things. God created the Bible through oral tradition. It wasn't written down initially, and so God's word and the message was passed on from generations through word of mouth. Right, so of course, it's not going to be, people weren't repeating it like a robot to each other until they eventually wrote it down.
I believe the Muslims view the Quran as like every word is literally straight from Allah.
Yeah, that's different. Yeah, because you can't interpret it unless it's in Arabic. You have to read it from Arabic for it to actually be the word of God. So that is different. That's not how Christians view the word of God. So
so like back to the like, is being gay a sin? Like, do you guys believe that being gay is a sin?
We hold to a biblical.
Fair enough.
Yeah, we hold to a biblical view of marriage, which the Bible defines marriage, and that
for
falls
example,
outside.
Would you support a law that says we're going to overturn gay marriage?
I wouldn't.
Well, I would only do that if there was public support for it. So
okay, so you're
now
you're the worst kind of, you're a bandwagoner. That's what you are.
I'll do it if everyone else is doing it. I believe in change.
You're what Jordan
that's what you are. You're a pragmatist.
No, I'm not. You're what Jordan Peterson calls a zebra, which is you camouflage yourself against the herd. I don't want to be seen. I just want to be in. As long as everyone else is doing it, then I'll do it.
No.
Have some balls. You led the Packers have won. You've led the revolution. The Green Bay is now the capital of the United States. You're in charge. Gay marriage, yes or no?
Paul, this is going to go to our fundamental disagreement about politics, which is why we disagree. But no, I don't like if I was a politician, I believe that my first duty is to my constituency. So that's why I would do that.
That's fair.
But so of my constituency, which today it's very split, but personally,
you would overturn gay marriage. And again, and I won't even keep saying this because like I'm aware we're on a public stream and he's against gay marriage. It's like I'm not saying that. I'm trying to understand. Okay. And by the way, there's plenty of people like Andrew Wilson who would say far worse things than I might overturn it. So I don't want to. I'm not trying to catch you in any optic type thing.
No,
and I'm
Paul,
aware of sometimes the nature of things.
Yeah, and to clarify, biblically speaking, I don't think there is another definition of marriage. So, quite frankly, I don't care what the government says marriage is. The Bible is my grounding.
I would absolutely
marriage is, and it's a man and a woman. And so the government, and if people want to say that this is a gay marriage, that's fine. I think that they're completely taking a word and it's meaningless in my mind.
I respect that, because if the government, for example, said a ordained Catholic priest or whatever Christian priest has to do a gay couple, I would say that's fucked. You can't force someone to do even though the government imbues that person with the power to do weddings, to refuse a wedding on the basis of it being a gay wedding. It's like, no. Absolutely, they should have that right. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to. So there's nuance there.
Based religious freedom.
Let me broaden this out to understand this. What is your guys', aside from just clout chasing and ankle biting, What is your issue with me? Like what or not me, but what is your issue with my view on religion? Because it seems like you acknowledge, well, within Christianity, there's going to be disputes, but like at the end of the practical stuff, we seem to agree on, like evolution, gay marriage, kind of. I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming you guys are not for banning condoms or banning like birth control. That's very strange opinion. Abortion, whatever. I think abortion, there's room for reasonable disagree.
Paul. Yeah.
Well, okay. I'll say anyone who thinks that the moment a sperm fertilizes an egg is a human being is foolish, in my opinion.
Okay.
And I think anyone who thinks it's okay to abort a child 5 minutes up until it comes out is satanic.
Okay.
Somewhere at 12 to 14 weeks, it becomes a person. I don't know exactly. My inability to point out a specific moment does not render me incapable of pointing out that the moment it starts and the moment it ends are not the right points. Anyway, that's abortion. So my broader question is, aren't I helping you guys out? I'm spreading cultural Christianity throughout the world. Isn't it great?
No, because it feels like, imagine if it was like a Bears scout at a Packers practice and you stole all of our play calls, all of our hand signals, and then you said you're even a Packers player. And then at the end of the time, you get into a preseason game and he's just a Bears player. It feels like you're a spy, and I that sounds like a meme, but I genuinely do feel like Jordan Peterson is leading Christians to reject their faith in 5 years. I truly do. I think he's a more effective atheist than Alex O'Connor or Sam Harris, because he gets you to disbelieve in fundamental truths of the Bible by just saying, oh, just think of it as fiction, and then still just live your life like you're a Christian. Okay, that's fine, but you're not any historical understanding of what it means to be a Christian.
I'll be right back. I gotta go use the restroom.
Yeah, go for it. Any historical understanding of being a Christian? I guess. First off, that's an odd analogy. I get the point, but we're not competing. Like Bears versus Packers is one team wins, one team loses.
Yeah,
it's you have a rich tradition. I am looking at that tradition and saying, oh, there's a lot of good shit here. Let me go out and use the shit that I think is good to make the world a better place. And
yeah, but that's not my goal.
Okay, so then fine. If the analogy, okay, we can go down that route. But hold on. If the analogy is it feels like I'm a traitor, so to speak. Then presumably I would be doing something that you disagree with. Like a traitor is bad because they do things that a traitor does. I give information to the enemy. I literally undermine our plans. Yeah. So what is something that I am doing on the YouTube channel that you think is wrong, or that you think I should change?
Or
saying, whatever.
Well, it's hard to make it as personal, but I would like to see, and I mean, we are literally the counterexample of this, but I would like to see Christians who believe in the truth claims of the Bible, like historically it's been understood, to be given a platform to have these arguments. It frustrates me to no end that you have an atheist debating a Jordan Peterson, and there's not the other side of Christianity.
That's fair. Well, look what I'm doing right now.
That's frustrating.
I'm in fact doing that, right? In fact, platforming the Christian belief.
Yes, you are.
So how am I? I'm not your traitor. I'm your ally now. Because I do think these conversations are valuable. Because it's a very different paradigm.
Well, I guess it has to go to my goal, Paul. Like my goal as a believer and believer in Christ is to get people saved, and I have an understanding what that means, and it's not make the world necessarily a better place. That might be a byproduct of it, but my goal is to get people to recognize that they're sinners in need of salvation, and then follow Christ. And that person may look really similar, pragmatically speaking, to someone that you could convert, Paul. But fundamentally, I think it's a different goal.
That's fair. And so, but our goals align a lot, don't they?
They do align a lot, which is why I think it's sneaky. And that's why you got an A tier, because I had to be careful. And I think.
Well, we already talked about why your tier list is completely worthless, but that's fine.
That's true. That's true. If someone was thinking about the world or thinking about Christianity, I wouldn't want them to hear their first time from a Paul or from a Jordan Peterson. That genuinely makes me sad. You have a place at the table, but it's to understand what it means to believe in Jesus shouldn't come from Jordan Peterson.
That's fair, but at least from my perspective, it's interesting because the exact opposite argument is made by atheists.
Correct.
Jordan Peterson is secretly a Christian. He's getting people to believe in Christianity. And you guys are saying Jordan Peterson is secretly an atheist who's getting people to deny their faith. And I'm like, surely there's people that fall into both categories. But how can you lay that at the feet of Peterson if you're getting complete opposite? Like, do you got? I'm sure you would recognize that there are people who were atheists that became Christian because of Peterson. I mean,
I would say in spite of Peterson, because Peterson will never make that leap to actually proclaim Christ.
Not in spite. He started them on the journey back to their faith. Whether or not he himself has proclaimed, I don't think, he doesn't himself needs to have converted to get other people to convert. So surely you would agree that many, many people who were atheist and might as well have been atheist and remained atheist are now saved because of what Peterson has done. You agree or disagree?
Yeah, I'd probably agree, but I also, because we don't have a study, what is the amount of Christians that have fallen away from their faith to take up this cultural Christianity?
Same. Fair enough. But that's my point is, okay, if both are true, I guess we don't. You're right. We can't say what's the number here and what's the number there. My intuition is it's roughly the same. Given there's for as many as there are of you guys. Actually, it's probably more Christians. It's probably more atheists becoming Christian because there's way more atheists bitching about Jordan Peterson than there are Christians, at least from what I see. Although I'm well aware that he is not loved in the Christian fundamentalist community, which is part of why I like him so much, because I'm happy to believe in evolution, as are you guys, you fucking heretics. What I would love to see, why don't you guys bring on some fundamentalists and argue about why they're wrong?
We will do that. We're starting, and we will do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's interesting, because like I said, you're saying, well, Paul, you say Josh and Seth, I presume, which has the same goal. You want to save people. Mm-hmm. That's the goal as a Christian. You're saying, Paul, you are, for these reasons, a barrier to that. Even though, like, generally, you're pointing, I'm shooing people in the right direction, generally, maybe.
Well,
I don't know if you guys think
it's just the saying, the enemy of my enemy is not necessarily my friend. And
true,
so
but sometimes
you are correctly pointing. You're correctly pointing that the atheist is not
cringe
your friend.
Atheism.
I don't think it. Yeah, cringe atheism doesn't necessarily get you
so
to...
would you, okay, so let me ask a question. Would you agree that however much of a problem I am, or to the degree that I'm problematic, to adopt some leftist terminology, to the degree that I'm problematic, you would agree that the people who believe the earth, the dispensationalists, are at least as problematic?
In what sense? In their impact on the world?
Whatever way that
their theology? I don't think...
No, I don't care. No, not the theology, in their impact. Whatever way you were just evaluating Peterson by saying, we don't know the numbers, we don't have a study, but I suspect he's getting more people to abandon their faith. You have some intuition that led you to that conclusion. Using that same intuition, are the dispensationalists at least as much of a problem as people like me?
I don't know if I could say so, because they still believe in Christ. That's the main
that's
crux.
fair.
Yeah, I would agree. The hard thing is that those dispensationalists and also a lot of Christian nationalists that Seth and I would define have a lot of power and abuse that a lot, and that also makes people reject Jesus as well. And so we're not a fan of that. We're not a fan of Christian nationalists in the same way.
Yeah, like for example, the Catholic Church, when it was at its most corrupt, was arguably a bigger enemy to Christianity than anything, right?
Correct. Yep.
Based Martin Luther.
Yeah. So, you know, I guess it's all you know, like okay, like for example, what's his name? The guy who bought the jet from Tyler Perry.
Oh,
the megachurch pastor, Joel
Osteen.
Not Joel Osteen.
Is it Kenneth Copeland?
Kenneth Copeland. Don't you ever say I did.
Yeah.
Right, that guy.
Yeah.
That guy is certainly worse for Christianity than I am.
He blew away COVID, though.
What do you mean?
Did you see him blow away COVID?
No, was he doing
like? You have to look up that clip for your. You have to look up that clip for your stream. Kenneth Copeland blowing away COVID. He saved the day.
Yep. So you would agree that he's certainly doing worse for Christianity than I am.
Yeah.
I hope you agree.
Yeah, I would agree.
Don't take my. I'm not. Sorry, it's a leading question. You can say that you don't agree, because if he is still fundamentally getting to, well, he still believes Jesus literally rose from the dead, and that's ultimately more important. Then fair enough. But then that's what the Catholics believed. So even when they were corrupt and selling indulgences, they still said and they believe that, you know, Jesus. So how do you is it just as long as you stick to the core tenets, then you're above everyone else? Westboro Baptist Church?
No, because it's also in tandem with your fruits, like you brought out, Paul. Like you talked about that. You will know them by your fruits. That's also true. Faith is in James, it says faith is dead without works. So that's in tandem. And so we look at Kenneth Copeland and we could say, even though he's saying some right things, maybe he's not living like a Christian. I could probably, don't know the personal life of Jordan Peterson. I don't know all of your personal life, Paul. So
you don't know any of it.
Just taking the things that you say, I'm making that assumption.
Sure. But then again, that's exactly how I see you guys. Is he, as
really attractive young men of the Lord?
Amen.
Big Christian guys.
Amen. So said the homosexual Christians throughout history. But that's how I see you guys, where it's like I see two handsome young men who are taking the faith that they were handed literally and not questioning it as much as I think they should. Why do you think that Jesus literally rose from the dead? There's no evidence of that whatsoever. Now we could say,
I wouldn't say that's.
Let's back up. Fine. Let's back up. You're right. That was a strong claim, because
that was a very strong claim.
The letters from Paul, right, are like it was all these people said, "Yo, this motherfucker came back to life," and and a bunch of them got crucified. They themselves died.
Correct.
Right. So like Tony Robbins, or not Tony Robbins, who's a good grifter, Hassan Piker is not giving up his life for socialism. So we can say pretty confidently he doesn't actually believe in any of that when it comes down to it. But the people that died for Christianity, they believed it. Okay. A lot of other religions fit that criteria.
Correct.
So it seems to me whatever evidence. So what I should say is, it's not that there's no evidence that Jesus rose from the dead. It's that whatever evidence you would cite, evidence in a logical sort of reasoning type way, whatever evidence you would say proves Jesus' resurrection, there are other religions that would claim as much evidence for their beliefs.
Correct.
So how am I?
Ours is better.
How do you know that, though?
We have faith from our understanding.
Fair enough. They have faith too. Right.
Correct.
So what I think the most, and this is my perspective, the most honest perspective, not the most honest, the one who truly commits to truth, capital T, whatever that means, would say, you know what? Fuck. I really don't know what these Muslims believe. I don't know what the Hindus believe. I don't have any understanding of religious history over the centuries, over the millennia. I don't know how these religious patterns converge. I don't know how they diverge. I don't know the role it plays in our psychology. I don't know the role that things like psychedelics have played, even though there's increasingly mounting evidence for all this crazy shit. I know virtually none of that. It would seem to be almost arrogant to say, And yet, despite all of that ignorance that I know is right before me, staring me in the face, I can say with almost certainty that Christianity is correct, or that putting my faith in Christianity is the best one. It's like, it might be. I honestly am like, it probably is. That's why I'm cultural Christian. But like, I haven't taken enough mushrooms yet to know.
Yeah. Man,
and the reason I enjoy
the Bible, and it's good.
No. Well, the reason I enjoy talking to, I don't like, I wouldn't even call you Christian fundamentalist, because a fundamentalist to me is one who rejects evolution.
Hey.
A fundamentalist is someone who takes.
We got off the bad label.
There you go. Good. But the reason I like talking to people who, like, early on, I talked to, you know who Parker Sedekase is by any chance? He's kind of a small Christian YouTuber. Yeah, I think you guys would love it. You should talk to him for sure.
Okay.
I could probably shoot him a DM. He's got a small podcast. He's got his master's in theology, talks to a bunch of different Christian professors. Him and I had a conversation one time, and we got kind of into the evolution type stuff. And he's just kind of like, look, man, this is what I believe. This is my faith. And it's like, you know what? I respect that 100%, because that's how I am with a lot of shit. Of like, Paul, how do you know that telling the truth or whatever, like, truth is it's like, well, Jordan Peterson makes all these claims, but then it's like, yeah, Jordan hasn't really worked out for Jordan Peterson very well, has it? So, like, honestly, man, at the end of the day, I just kind of say, look, time moves in a linear progression. I have to move with it. And since I have to move with it, I'm going to operate in this manner until God striketh me down like he did Saul and turn me into Paul. And I will become whatever the third iteration of Paul is.
Why refer to yourself as cultural Christian at all? Why don't you just be like, I'm agnostic and I
fight
like
back against the cringe atheists who don't know anything about how our entire Western moral system is in effect Christian. The reason it works is because it's rooted in Christian ethics.
And I think that comes probably from a fundamental belief that I think stems from Peterson, that you think fundamental Christians have lost. Like, atheists are beating them in the debate sphere.
They were for a while.
It's over.
I'm worried it's going the other way. It seems to me now we're inevitable for a right-wing swing. Back to your horrible hit piece and review of my Christian nationalist video, you said something to the effect of, although you said something different in this conversation, it sounded like, but you said not that many people call themselves Christian nationalists, not that many people know what it is. They're not that. I overestimate their influence, right? That was essentially what you were saying?
Yep.
2 words. Ready?
Yep.
For now. Christian nationalists are not popular. They don't have a lot of influence. For now. This is exactly what the pronoun thing and the people on the far left 8-10 years ago. And I say this all the time. I remember being in the kitchen. My mom said to me, I don't know when this 8 years ago, Paul, at University of, I think it was like Tennessee or something like that. At some university, they ask the students to put their pronouns in their name. I was like, oh, just wait. Because it was obvious at the time, there's no limiting principle to this, obviously. And now every single corporation, virtually, has your pronouns on your signature. It's technically, someone who has worked at corporations, it is technically workplace harassment to not refer to someone by their preferred pronoun. So, and that trajectory in my mind, because I'm inexorably unique and capable.
Yep.
That was obvious to me that was going to happen. The same thing with Christian nationalism. When I see Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens and all these people converging on the same lines of argumentation that are archetypal, that I know work psychologically, and I know have a history of working, it's like, it's obvious in 5 to 10 years, the Christian nationalists will be the dominant movement in the Republican Party. So that's my perspective. For now, they don't have the power, but they will. And as someone who operates in the
Trump,
meme sphere,
and you're going to vote for Trump, who you think will give it to him. Speaking of, I have a clip, Paul. I have a clip.
Oh, please. Okay, fair. What? Okay.
America,
go ahead,
get your friends, get your family, get everyone you know, and vote. Vote early, vote absentee, vote on election day. I don't care how, but you have to get out and vote. And again, Christians, get out and vote just this time. You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed. It'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore, my beautiful Christians. I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. I love you. Get out. You got to get out and vote. In 4 years, you don't have to vote again. We'll have it fixed so good you're not going to have to vote.
Daddy Trump's going to fix it so well for us, Paul. We don't even have to vote.
Yeah.
He's gonna take over the government for us.
First off, did he say I'm not a Christian or I am a Christian? I'm a Christian. I'm not a Christian.
I know a lot of people on Twitter are going crazy. He said I'm not a Christian. It sounds like he said I'm a Christian. Yeah. I'm a Christian.
He did? I heard I'm not.
I think he said I am because why on earth would he say to a bunch of Christians whose votes he needs that I'm not a Christian? That's my thing.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
It does sound like he said I'm not. Like if someone captioned it, I'm not a Christian, I would hear it exactly like that.
I don't know. Maybe he was being honest.
Okay,
he's leaving the door wide open.
That's not the point where he would have been honest. That's the last point. If he's trying to secure political power, that's not where he would have been honest. So what do you want to talk about Trump and why I'm Trump curious?
Yeah.
Why shouldn't I be? First off, wait. So hold on. He said, what did he say? He said, you won't have to vote anymore. So what do you think he means?
You won't have to vote. I just need. Well, I'm not. I mean,
why did you? Some
people on the left I can disparage? Well, I think from your understanding and worldview, I think Trump is such a useful idiot to the people around him that to the people that you're the most afraid of taking government power, which maybe there's people on the left that you're more afraid of, but it seems like the Christian nationalists pose more of a threat. They're a little bit more organized, and they have a history of using government to suit their aims. Why would you not be more hesitant of a man who's willing to bend over backwards for that group, for their vote and support?
I would say he doesn't bend over backwards. He does quite the opposite. He condemned, for example, Project 2025 just a few days ago, said they're too extreme. He said, there's no way I do a national abortion ban. He was pro-gay marriage. All of the things that I would say are too extreme from the fundamentalist Christians, it seems like Trump is actively opposed to. So that would be number one.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Number one.
Number two, it is who's worse, Trump or now it seems like Harris. I think the far left. I think that the left-wing excesses are as dangerous as the right-wing excesses. They're different. But for example, I think our open border is a problem, a very big problem. And I just think that Trump will be more likely to solve that, even if it's less than 50%.
Even though he tossed that border bill in the Congress.
Well,
on Trump's order.
That border bill, I haven't read it myself, but people who I regard as being informed on it said that border bill did absolutely nothing. And first, because the what's the fucking agency that does the border?
ICE.
ICE and border control and all that. Or border, why can't I think of it? They're all executive agencies. You don't need laws. You can have the executive agency change their regulation, right? Like this is a basic government.
But I think one of the problems was the lack of funding going to those agencies.
No. So my understanding, the border patrol groups said, like the border patrol groups said, this bill will not solve it. The border patrol groups, the people at the border said, we need to change how the process works. It's not a matter of funding. It's that we need to stop doing what we're doing when the people come here, which is they come here, we process them, we give them a court date 6 months or 3 years from now, we give them a phone and $250, and then we let them loose in the country, which is what we do now. That process needs to change. That bill did not do that. That's my understanding. I could be wrong.
Wasn't that specifically for asylum seeking, though? Because I think a lot of immigrants currently, they just walk up, they seek asylum, which we currently can't really deny.
We can't absolutely. Why could we not deny asylum claims?
I just don't think we have it written in the books currently. That's at least my understanding. I don't think that we have it.
I don't think there's any. This is a fair. This is why I don't care as much about politics as I like philosophy. But it is important. But because it is a manifestation of philosophy. Otherwise, it is just talking about things with no practical implications. So this is a relevant conversation. I don't know. I don't think that Congress needs to change I believe the Border Patrol and the government executive agencies have the authority to refuse asylum claims. I believe our asylum claim, it's international law that says countries need to abide by these rules for asylum stuff. We're under no obligation to abide by international law. Oh my God, that's so fucked up. Yeah, oh well, Netanyahu just gave a speech to Congress, so I don't really give a shit what anyone thinks about in terms of international law and whether or not we abide by it. Which, by the way, hold on, side question. This is one of the questions I want to ask you guys real quick.
Oh, man. Yeah, go.
Do you believe that the ethnic Jews are God's chosen people, or did you actually read the Bible where Paul said there is no more Jew or Gentile?
So that's so funny because when Seth was talking about looking at dispensationalism, when the whole Israel-Palestine conflict broke out, I did a whole lot of reading because everyone in our close circles, Christian circles, were saying, well, you have to support Israel because you have to biblically. And I was like, well, that intuitively, it didn't make a lot of sense to me from my understanding of the New Testament. And so, yes, Paul is clear that the spirit of Israel is under Christ, believers in Christ. Now, I do think God has a future plan for Jews, but ultimately their salvation is through one man.
What's the future plan for Jews?
Christ.
How does that work? I don't even know.
They fall on their knees and they submit to Christ. The Jews are in a period of.
Is it a worse future than the rest of us?
No, I don't. There is that one view of Revelation where they've got to get like basically sacrificed on the altar in the land, and I'd have to dig into Revelation a lot more.
That's fair.
I think a lot of it is.
But we all three of us would agree that the idea that God privileges someone on the basis of their genetics is not particularly true.
No. And part of that is because of Christ. That is true from an Old Testament reading. Christ completely opens that up. It's
right. So the way I see it, and we can get back to Trump, but just real quick, because the way I see it is, and I've said this to Israelis who come on my stream, and there's very different Israelis. There's the far right Israelis and the liberal Israelis. The secular liberal gay Israelis are the fucking heroes of this story. It's the far right, the Israelis who are the villains. I say to them, listen, I respect everyone's right to practice what religion they want. However, the religious Jewish claim, the Orthodox Jewish claim that the Jews are God's chosen people, I think is silly and ridiculous. Just as I find the implementation of Sharia law to be silly and ridiculous, and that the earth was created in 6,000 years to be silly and ridiculous. And I am very much disgusted with the degree to which it seems that we are utterly unable to have my concerns that many people share about Israel and the degree to which religious Judaism props up Israel in America, to not be able to have that conversation openly. Not even have the conversation openly. We can have the conversation openly, but no one in the political system can respond to that at all because of an extremely twisted set of incentives brought on by the Israel lobby, to speak broadly. But that is not why we have come here to talk.
Man, we can dig into that maybe in the future, because I do. That is probably where we would have disagreements. I don't know.
But
Seth,
anyway,
I feel like
to tie it back to Trump, it's
Trump,
unfortunate because Trump seems to support Israel more than Biden. So fuck Trump for that. And to be honest, I kind of would think most likely I'm not going to vote. So the part of the reason I'm Trump curious is
you're not white dudes for Harris.
No.
What about RFK?
Yeah, I'd vote for RFK. Although he's also pro fucking Israel. So it's like, oh my God, guys, our three candidates who hate each other and they're so divided, except on the issue that it's like, you'd think there'd be a lot more division politically on this issue, but doesn't seem to get reflected. And that's problematic. Anyway, again, we don't have to talk about that. Here's my broader perspective that I think I should clarify up front more. If I were to vote for Trump, it'd because I think there's a 30 to 40% chance he solves the issues I want, and there's a 60% chance that he fucks everything up.
That's a crazy percentage.
It's crazy, except when you compare it to the alternative option, which is Kamala Harris. And I'd say there's a 10% chance that she solves everything.
But Paul, 4 years of Biden.
Hold on, why do you guys hate Trump? Hold on. This is it's very interesting because we just had this wonderful, rich philosophical conversation. And now I'm getting a little bit of TDS from you guys. So what's going on?
Because Paul, here's the funny thing. I was talking to Seth and I said, you called JJ McCullough the dark centrist. It's actually we're the dark centrists because we're the conservatives that got ousted by Trumpist populist regime that threw out all of our favorite politicians and belief systems, that abandoned all of the moral precepts that we had. Trump is the scourge of the Republican Party, and I need to say that up front.
Trump is King Cyrus, and you would do well to do more research on him.
No. There's too many people on Facebook commenting that. Oh my word!
I love adopting the arguments of a side that I have no business agreeing with or even care about, and then using it against people from the other angle that they attack me on.
Yeah, to make you mad, we're probably establishment Republicans.
Yeah, neocons, it sounds like.
Yeah.
That's fine. Look,
we're going to make that cool.
Yeah. Bring Mitt Romney back.
What does Anakin say to Obi-Wan? You will try. I don't think it'll work. I hope it doesn't work. But, no, I don't think it'll work, and I hope it doesn't work. I guess, look, I was listening to Mark Andreessen, and I believe it's Ben Horowitz, Mark Andreessen invented the browser, like Google Chrome. Or he didn't invent Chrome, but he invented the concept of a browser. They run Andreessen Horowitz. It's a very successful consulting firm. They're very intelligent, very like multi-billionaires, tech. They invest in all kinds of tech. They said they're voting for Trump. That's odd because most Silicon Valley people are left-wing or whatnot. And I listened to the podcast. And a theme that repeatedly came up was the degree to which they were praising people like Chuck Schumer and Richie Torres and people who I would consider establishment shills, right? Or who I would refer to as establishment shills, sort of in a joking sense. I would say that as I believe it, but I would make jokes about it, obviously, because I do believe that in a sense. But I did have to think about it for a second of like, going back to, look, I know how little I know. It's like, there's a lot of shit that the neocon Mitt Romneys and the Richie Torres and the Chuck Schumers and the Mitch McConnell, that they do right, that keeps the lights on in society that I'm just simply not aware of. So I get that, which is, but I think on balance, I think that I am able to have that attitude towards the establishment, but I think a lot of established people are not able to have that attitude towards the populist as much. And I'm increasingly considering referring to myself as a populist instead of a centrist, because Enlightened Centrist, first off, Enlightened Centrist was a specific term that already existed. It was already an insult. And I was like, I'm going to be so charismatic to bring cachet back to a term, right? I'm going to make fetch a thing, basically, was my mission. And I basically did. It's wildly successful. But when it comes to explaining things, what Seth said at the beginning, no one's more humble than I am. What Seth said at the beginning about like, well, but the answer is not necessarily in the middle. It's like, I'm just increasingly realizing or accepting that you cannot use the word centrist without giving that implication. So I'm kind of like, I'm going with radical, enlightened populist, not enlightened centrist.
The reason I brought that up was because I thought you said that the answer politically was usually in the middle, though.
It's arrived at by synthesizing the right wing and left wing perspective. Which doesn't necessarily mean it's exactly in the middle. So, for example, like, well, what are the far right about at any given time? It's like, well, mass deportations is people would associate with the far right. Okay, I believe there was an Axios poll. I don't know why I say I believe. There was an Axios poll, and I believe 54% of Hispanics and 64% of all Americans supported mass deportation. So now the far-right perspective conceptually is now being adopted by 64% of the people. What does that mean? That means we are obligated to go, okay, clearly there's some truth that the radical right is in possession of. It's up to us to take that truth from them, so we can excise and purge them when they say all the crazy fucking shit about ethno-supremacy and whatever else, right? It's especially true with the Israel stuff. It's like the biggest drag on valid criticism of Israel is the psychos who are drugged out in their own rooms and depressed saying, well, the reason I can't get a girlfriend is because the Jews are, it's like, you fucking nutcases. You're actually getting in the way of real moral criticism that should be levied against a allegedly secular nation state. And so I don't even know. When I rant about Israel, I lose the train of where I came from. But
you get a haze.
I want to ask you comparing, because you lived through both 4 years of Trump versus 4 years of Biden, how has Biden substantively impacted your life in worse ways than 4 years of Trump?
I don't think he has. I have white privilege. I'm immune from most of the problems of the world.
So how does that bake into your equation with Harris is going to be a more hazardous equation?
Because my privilege insulates me from most short-term problems. But when I look at the long-term stability of society, like 5 to 10 years from now, and these are things that I think about, even, like, in the most practical sense, you can say financially. Like, I have a 401k. I don't contribute to my 401k. Why? Well, because I think that it's probably more likely that I will need resources within the next 40 years to deal with some big problem than the likelihood that society will be completely stable and happy and wonderful 40 years from now. It's like, it's almost, I don't know. I was talking to my friend about this. There's two forms of delusion that we all operate in at any given time. There's one delusion, which is I could delete my YouTube channel. I could go touch grass. I could go join the pickleball group. I could go hang out with, I was gonna say some of my coworkers, but some of them are
go to church.
Kind of nerd. I could go to church. I could do all those things. I could be completely insulated from all of the problems of almost everyone. And then all of my problems will be in my personal life. That should be the foundational attitude, because otherwise it is just cope. But then the flip side is true. It's like, well, is that person not just so utterly delusional that, like, hey, buddy, we live in a democracy. You know that your ability to figure out what's going on is the thing that guides our state forward, and you can't just ignore it. And, just because you're wealthy and at home and safe, fucking 2 blocks down the street when I lived in Chicago, it's like, was Garfield Park, which is like one of the worst neighborhoods in Chicago. It's like, that seems oddly delusional to think, oh, this shit doesn't matter. So like so the way I'm looking at things, again, in my world, I'm someone who accurately saw a lot of these trends play out, like the pronoun stuff as one example, but there's many other examples. And I saw that trend play out at a societal level. I saw it play out at a personal level. So I believe that I have a relatively strong degree or a strong ability to see patterns and see where they play out long term. And I believe illegal immigration and the what would you say, the dissolution of our metaphorical substrate, right, which is a Petersonian term. Ha ha ha. Exactly. It's funny, but it's like, well, I have seen the metaphorical substrate is one of the most important ideas in the way that I see it, and I've used it to predict things, so to speak. And it's like, okay, these are the big long-term issues I'm concerned about. And when like I said, with Trump, well, Christian nationalism, what's the long-term problem with Christian nationalism? Fascism, essential, banning contraceptives, extreme religious fundamentalism, the stuff that you hate. It's like, okay, for the reasons I said, I actually think that Trump is drawing a relatively sharp line there. Now, you say he's a useful idiot. Fair enough. I look at people like Vivek, who are sort of echoing Trump's kind of rhetoric. I promise you, he's not a Christian fundamental. Well, he's a Hindu, so he's definitely not a Christian fundamentalist. But that mimetic strain is being nourished, and I would predict that that's actually going to be a pretty strong strain. Like, there are plenty of Republicans who support having access to condoms, among other things, and have gay family members and shit. And like, reality has built-in self-correcting mechanisms, right? You can only be so fundamentalist about your anti-gay perspectives when you don't know any gay people. That's not true.
Correct. Yeah.
Oftentimes, it can be you have a child who's gay, and that's what feeds into it. But my point is, a lot of it is often the removal from, the fact that you're not part of reality to that degree. So I would say broadly, the long-term stuff I'm worried about. I'm more, the no human is illegal ideology, I think, is like the dissolution of the nation state.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess my rebuttal, and then I want to make sure that we get you out of here on time, because I know.
Yeah, like I said, I had a meeting now, but it's past, so I can.
Okay.
I'll go when I'm bored. How about that? Or when you guys kick me out.
Okay.
I haven't been.
We'll
bored
keep
yet.
you. All right. Well, that's good, because I was going to say, in rebuttal to that I see the restraint or pushback bouncing back from Democrat side in a reaction to Trump in ways that I didn't see growing up. So, for explanation,
that's why I voted for Biden.
Correct. But I'm seeing that more now. And I see a future where the Democrats actually are moderating themselves in reaction to Trump in ways that I didn't foresee 8 years ago. So, for example, I never would have thought that the Democrats 8 years ago would be the party that is championing the Constitution and law and order. That they're running on that platform. I never would have saw that. And it took an outlier to our political system like Trump to get the Democrats to realize, like, oh, this is a winning talking point, or maybe we should play to the center on this issue.
Sure.
People
like Bill Maher are like, there's definitely left wingers who push back against the far left. That's definitely there. But all of the institutions of power are owned by the extremely radical left ideology. That's fucking insane. I see almost no.
How do you see that in Biden? Biden seems like
I don't see anything in Biden. I see Biden.
Exactly.
Biden
he seems
is
like the most status quo.
Okay, well, first off, Biden's
politician.
not running anymore, so we don't have to talk about Biden.
Yeah. Kamala Harris.
Same thing. I think she talks about equity.
Correct. Okay, which Democrats? I mean, that's been a Democrat talking point for a while.
Yeah, but here's the fundamental difference. This is the Mark Cuban talking point. And I actually believe this. Most Democrats, when they say equity, they don't know. They just think they mean equality. They think equity is another word for equality. Most people. In fact, I believe most people actually think that.
Yeah.
And functionally, from a language perspective, if most people think that's what it means, then that is what it means. So fine. Yep. That's not how Kamala Harris describes it. There's endless clips of her saying, not equality, equity.
Yeah, now, she's well read.
Now that's exactly. That's one specific manifestation of that ideology. And I regard that ideology as, right now, it's worse than Christian nationalism for sure, because it owns all the institutions of power. Academia, the corporations, the mainstream media. Now, I will say, with mainstream media, it's actually legacy media, because I don't think it's mainstream anymore. I do think the facts are that Joe Rogan has more listenership than CNN by orders of magnitude. So I don't even think
Musk owns Twitter.
Yeah, so I don't even think you can say anymore the left owns media. At minimum, it's fair, and if anything, it favors the right. Okay, academia, which is an institution that matters in the long term, but any given time, not so much. Corporations still dominated. Now, a lot of corporations are fighting the DEI department, fine, but the NGOs that help people come across the border, that's fucked, in my opinion. That's facilitating illegal immigration with government tax dollars.
The only way to have a positive change on this stuff that you're talking about, at least for us as individual citizens, because none of us currently hold any type of office, we're just 3 people talking on a podcast, is our vote. which is upheld by the Constitution. Do you think that Kamala Harris is making a stronger attack on the Constitution and the upholding of it when compared to Trump? Because I would believe that Trump seems to be making threats towards voting and the legitimacy of voting, which is more scary to me than those things, because the only way I can fight back on those things where I can agree, I don't like equity, I'm not a communist. The only way I can fight back against that as a normal citizen is to vote.
Especially in the immediate term, because
that's not
we're
true
not
at
saying,
all. I completely disagree, by the way.
We're saying like in 4 years, you could have Ron DeSantis, but Trump is such an anomaly narcissist.
Ron DeSantis sucks. And Nikki Haley
He's
sucks
a populist.
Too. He banned meat or fake meat. I don't know why he would do that. Hold on. Voting is irrelevant as individuals. Not as a collective, but us three, we just said, we're not politicians. There's only three of us talking on a podcast. No one will probably see this, I'm sure. Unless I clip it. Unless I clip the parts I want to show.
Yes. Exactly.
But you and I know that our votes literally will make no difference no matter what. Our chance of winning the lottery are like hundreds of, I don't know about hundreds. A lot higher than voting, making any difference in the presidential election. Also, what states again? You're in Wisconsin, Seth? Okay, you might, and you're in Arizona.
We're in swing states.
I'm in Texas.
Yeah, Arizona.
And even in swing states, you know that the chance that your singular vote makes any difference is virtually non-existent. Right? Now, hold on.
Your political voice. Your political voice does matter.
Hold on.
Not having a vote, though.
Hold on. This is the brutal honesty conversation. Because you framed it as we're just three guys talking. Okay, if we're just three guys talking, you and I fucking know none of that shit matters. So let's not look at it from that lens, because if everyone had that attitude, it would be a problem. It's like recycling. Well, or it's like being a vegan or vegetarian. I have a great respect for vegetarians and vegans. Not so much for the environmental shit, because that's all nonsense, but for the ethical stuff, because it's fucked. The animal, the factory farming's fucked. Like objectively, there's no argument against it, or there's no argument for it other than, it stops people from starving, but you can do stuff. But that doesn't. But like, we should be encouraging individuals to change their consumption habits so that, like, hey, if you can afford, you should buy the pasture-raised eggs or the non-factory farm milk. That's what I try to do, to the degree that I have the privilege that I do. When I go to the grocery store, I'm like, okay, I'll pay $4 more for eggs to get the small family farm one, so I can, in my own small way, contribute to the broader economic system that allows these to outcompete the factory farming. With voting, fair enough. I just think that it's absolute. What do you think Trump's going to do with voting? You think he's going to get rid of the right to vote? In what way is Trump? So this is a question I'm going to ask Destiny.
He riles up a base that doesn't care.
I'm sure.
That comes to your opinion
Trump's
on
the
it,
first
Paul.
guy to ever. Trump's the first guy to rile up a base. Hold on. This is my question. Hold on. This is my question. Okay. And I want to know.
This part's going to get clipped,
so
Seth.
Easily.
This is going to be the one that ends up on Paul's channel. I'm going to look like an idiot.
Listen.
That's insane.
Shh, listen. And this is I want to hear from people who I regard as at least somewhat intelligent. Okay. And you guys will fall into that category.
Not Seth.
Walk me through. Trump wins the election in November 2024. He wins the election. It's certainly conceivable that 55% of America could vote for him, and in a free and fair election. Okay, so Trump is now the president. Walk me through the unraveling of our democracy. Where does it start? Who does he target? Go.
I could see it.
Seth, I'm letting you go.
Yeah.
And then I'll go.
I think that if he wins, he would make a push towards a changing of how they actually go about counting votes or legitimizing votes, whether that's taking away
mail-in voting.
Mail-in voting.
It's illegal in France. Did you know that?
I didn't know that, but also,
you know why it's illegal?
Mail-in voting would also make it so a ton of military personnel couldn't vote at all, which we probably don't want.
And I'll have to double check. I believe the French make an exception for people who are military. So even if I'm saying mail-in voting, and a great fact check. Good to have a Jamie here. But mail-in voting for the average populace is the reason it's illegal is because it's very vulnerable to fraud. Which like
Sure,
this is
and
hold on. This
Seth,
is okay.
Seth, keep walking through your plan.
Yeah. So far, yeah.
It's
Here, start with your like. Trump might make mail-in voting illegal. Okay, honestly, that's not that bad. If that's the worst case, then I'm not worried. Tell me the worst
say just that
thing
because
when he wins.
You brought up Vivek as well. Vivek also is running on raising the age of voting, which I'd be against because it's based.
You should absolutely have to be 21 or 25 to vote.
I don't agree with that.
Okay,
I think that
fine.
The reason Vivek and people like Trump argue that isn't because of some actual belief in it. I think it's just due to statistics that younger people vote more Democrat, and they're trying to lessen the Democratic voters.
I think you're right.
I see it.
I think two things can be true at once, and I think that's exactly what the Democrats do with illegal immigrants.
Yeah, but I'm more sympathetic towards strengthening against fraudulent voting without taking like voting rights away, because I do think raising the age of a vote wouldn't be strengthening the fraudulent part at all. It's just saying, hey,
you're reducing the number of dumb people voting, because the younger you are, generally speaking, the dumber you are. Is that not true? Generally speaking,
there's a lot of dumb old people.
I don't know if that.
I know. Yes, there's many of them. One of them was about to be president again until they fucking cooed his. No, I'm just kidding. The whole line that it was a coup against Biden is the dumbest fucking thing in the world.
It's cringe.
Yeah.
I'm for restricting voting rights for sure. 100%. Less people should be voting than they are now. I love democracy precisely because not every single person gets a vote. That's insane to have 12-year-olds voting. It's insane to have 13-year-olds voting.
Sure. I think that there would be better ways to get around the fraudulent part that you're scared about.
Fine. Okay.
Also, I would also say, in terms of the amount of dumb people, I think young dumb people usually just don't vote. And I think the amount of voters in general, I think there's probably a lot more stupid old heads voting than there are stupid young people voting. So I don't think the age thing has to do with the IQ.
Possibly. Sure. That's a hypothesis. Okay. But so far, nothing you have said is even remotely like doomsday or worst case. What's the worst possible outcome if Trump is the president?
I would say, to your point, looking long in the future, I'm seeing no more people even close to, even though you hate DeSantis, people like DeSantis, people like Nikki Haley, who really are pro-Constitution in the Republican Party, but they're going to start saying lines like Trump has of, hey, it's okay if we just kind of go around the Constitution every once in a while.
It is okay to go around the Constitution every once in a while.
Not if it's based on a lie.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think he's gone about it in the incorrect way. Not that the Constitution is malleable.
Fine. You can say that.
And I don't think that he really had. It's weird. You're a populist, but I would make the argument that Trump is almost trying to get rid of the way we go about populism.
Okay, so hold on. So restricting voting. So he wants to raise the voting age, which is actually not fundamentally discriminatory because everyone eventually gets to the age to be able to vote. So it's like, well, you're stopping certain people from voting. Yeah, until they turn a certain age, and then they have the same rights that everyone else does.
But
the age. So forget age. That's fine. Reasonable people could disagree on what age you should be able to vote on. Fine. Some people say 16 or 13 or whatever. So what does he want to do? Does he want to stop brown people from voting? Do you think? Do you think he's racist?
Let me pitch some things.
Okay.
He's certainly going to appoint several super supremely conservative judges all across the nation. That's a given. He's already done that. We've seen that. So that might not necessarily think like that's a bad idea, but it is, especially if he's getting people in lockstep with bad future politicians. So if you had another Vivek Ramaswamy wants to deny election results, you already have people that are echoing Trump's philosophy. You have Carrie Lake here in my state.
By the way, it's Vivek. We're a bunch of racists for mispronouncing it. I started it because I said Vivek first. I don't think
you have people echoing Trump's philosophy. Carrie Lake in Arizona still denies that she lost, and she got hammered in Arizona. Okay. And so these people are going to keep
Okay.
rising up. And if Trump elects enough judges, you're going to have a scenario where the Supreme Court just now gave Trump
The
pretty much
exact
practical
okay, that's
criminal
true.
immunity.
That's
so
true.
you have to think of, like, for the long term, like
Yeah.
your percentage wise has to consider.
I have. Because the exact same thing can be said about the Democrats. Hillary denied the election. Who's the Georgia? Stacey Abrams
She
denied
gave
the
that up
election?
in a night, though.
It was a day.
That was a single day.
It was like a day.
To this
And there's
day,
no
she repeats the
lawsuits.
lie that it was a rigged election from Russia.
But she didn't
Now,
file
hold
any
on. Are you
lawsuits,
okay?
though.
Okay, fair enough. Now, what you're presupposing there is that it has to be a legal, unless there's a legal contestation. That's what fundamentally matters. Which is interesting because that's the opposite argument I hear from people like you. And I think earlier of what you just said of it's the rhetoric that's problematic. Trump is riling up his base to believe a lie. That is literally what Hillary did and does. Now you say, well, but he didn't. Yeah, but she didn't do the other. She didn't do the legal contestations. She didn't try all these different things. Fair enough. Is that the fundamental issue at hand?
Does she still?
Trump instituted
repeating a lie?
Does she still deny the election results?
No, she conceded the election like next day. The next day.
And then how many years did she continue to say it was a rush? Trump was support. The whole Russiagate hoax happened in the 2 years that after Trump was elected, and the whole time Trump is a Russian agent, and they proved unequivocally that was complete bullshit.
But Paul, you would agree. Democrats looking into Russia influence in the 2016 election.
Mm-hmm.
They don't talk about that at all anymore. Republicans are still running that the 2020 election was stolen from them. They're still running. That's a platform.
Fuck them. Fuck the Republicans.
It's a mainstream platform, Paul. That Trump emboldens.
Once again, what's my alternative to Trump? Kamala Harris?
Pretty status quo Democrat.
Okay,
we're not talking about Bernie Sanders.
Okay,
we're not talking about.
Here's what I think. I think that we are facing existential threats in the next 20, 30 years. Technological, primarily. Geopolitical. Maybe environmental. I don't think I would be for a revolution and a second constitutional convention to rewrite the Constitution. I think that our institutions are medieval. We are unable to address the rapidly changing world that we're in. And it's going to require radical change. And I think Trump has a, like I said, 30 to 40% chance of shaking things up enough to create the space where that radical change can happen. It's a 60% chance we all fucking die. Fine. With Kamala Harris, I think it's 80%.
How?
That's all.
She's not disrupting the system in the same way.
They fundamentally...
The Constitution.
Okay. Let's get philosophical.
Okay.
Why should I care what the Constitution says? Because it's a pretty good document, right? It's a very useful tool. First Amendment.
It's
pretty goddamn great. Arguably, it's the best Constitution ever written.
It's the best system of government
ever
in human
written.
History.
I'm going to appeal to your pragmatism. It has resulted in probably the best outcome
so far.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. If, let's say, we restricted voting rights, let's say we had let's say in order to be able to vote, you had to pass the same civics exam that an immigrant has to pass. Okay, let's say that's what our democracy has. Would that prevent more Trump voters from voting or Biden voters from voting? Kamala. Do you think that there are more ignorant people who vote for Trump or more ignorant people who vote for Kamala?
More ignorant people vote for Trump.
Yeah, I think Trump.
Right interesting.
Now,
and that is demonstrated. More of them are not college educated. I don't know how you feel about college.
Okay.
More of them are not college educated. They're rural.
Okay, fine. Fair enough. Let's go with that hypothesis. I think that's perfectly plausible. Okay, so if our democracy restricted voting more, we would have potentially eliminated the very threat to democracy that we're worried about now.
Well, it depends on how you're limiting it. If you're limiting that's why Republicans are sneaky. Republicans are sneaky in inner states where they say they're denying certain IDs.
This is philosophical now, because I would say
the
idea that
zoom out.
the idea that it's somehow even remotely unconstitutional or immoral to say in order to be able to vote, you need to pass a citizenship exam. If you say people have accused me, they say that's Jim Crow. I say, first off, you're fucking insane. Second off, because Jim Crow, if you're going to call that Jim Crow, you don't know what Jim Crow was. And I'm not saying you guys are commenting that. I'm saying people, that comment comes up repeatedly every time I bring this up. But I would say, why? Like the electoral college, fucking stupid.
I think electoral college is kind of based.
Okay, in my opinion,
I come from a small state.
In my opinion, it's fucking stupid. I obviously
you want California to rule.
No, I want my vote in Texas to not matter 1,000 times less than someone's vote in Montana, which is what it is.
It would still not matter as much as California, which would have all of the
votes are by individual. I'm sorry. Do we live in an individual society?
No, I'm talking about the culture of California. How many people are there in the same set of circumstances that are voting in lockstep?
Here's my point. There's so much in the Constitution that's not worth protecting. That when people say, I care about the Constitution, it's like, okay, well, that alone is not enough to be even remotely convincing. The First Amendment is deeper than the Constitution. It's enshrined in the Constitution. And I think it should be fought and killed for, which is what it was. But the idea that people should be free to articulate the truth is like a religious idea. So that the First Amendment is sacred in a way that the Constitution only enshrines legally. But like, oh my God, Trump presents a risk to democracy. Okay. How do we know that the current version of democracy is worth preserving? Why don't we, or like the democracy that we have and that has the Electoral College, which many, many people think is complete bullshit. We lack all kinds of fundamental things that I think are destroying our society. I think the long-term trends, one of the biggest things I support is like civil service. Israel, South Korea, Switzerland all does this because we're so fragmented as a society. We don't have as citizens, we have no cultural touch point, no common touch point. That's a dissolution of our metaphorical substrate, so to speak. And I'd say I would support a populist revolution, an undemocratic populist revolution, if it meant that we could implement reforms that would be beneficial for democracy in the long run. It's good to subvert the Constitution if it protects the most important things that the Constitution is meant to protect.
So break the Constitution to fix the Constitution.
Yep, exactly like Lincoln did.
Can't we do this in our current system, though?
I don't understand. Yeah.
Can we? I don't know.
I feel like we've been seeing that with the overturning of Roe v. Wade and also with presidential immunity. Like the Supreme Court is very active. It doesn't seem like we're a very stagnant nation in terms of things that we thought would never change.
The border has been essentially open for 3 years.
I don't know.
Why has that not been solved?
Because it's a complex problem. It's not as easy as Republican and MAGA like to make it seem.
Listen, that's true for everything.
How do you fix the asylum? Yeah, how do you fix the asylum system is a really complex political question.
You do not cede control of the executive agencies to people with an ideology of no human is illegal. Because you're right, it is a complex. You're right, it's a complex problem, but you also have to recognize that because something is complex, it doesn't absolve you of the responsibility of trying to figure out how to solve it. Because you could just say, I don't give a fuck about any of this, which is what most people do, and fair enough.
And I don't think a lot of people actually genuinely care about it like you do, Paul, like in Congress, like obviously so. Even like people use it as a talking point all the time, but they don't care about actually fixing any of the issues. I fully believe if Trump gets reelected, he's not going to do anything when it comes to border policy. That's not going to be.
I know for sure.
That's not going to be either undone or changed
I'm much
in the
more
next 4 years.
confident. Look, it's a probability. I mean, I don't know how. Like 40% Trump, 20% Kamala. I'm going to go with the 40%, even though it's less than half. Still awful, still bad. I hate Trump. I wish our entire system was different. But alas, here we are.
Why do you trust the guy who shot down or at least pressured people to shoot down a border bill?
Because we already talked about that.
Something. Yeah, I understand.
The border bill
it wouldn't have helped
done bad
necessarily,
overall.
but it would have at least been a stepping stone to see some more
I don't know
progress.
that that's true. My understanding is it would have made things worse.
Oh, okay. I have a complete different understanding though. I thought
That's
it was
fair.
gonna
I've
help
never. Have
average
you read the
out.
bill?
I haven't read it, but
Neither
I've
have
also, yeah, that's fair.
Which proves how ignorant
so-
we are, and we shouldn't be talking about any of this. That's
Yeah,
why I like to talk about philosophy. Because when it comes
yeah,
to politics,
on our-
it's like, listen, there's all kinds of fucking shit that I really don't know.
Our YouTube channel,
I'm extrapolating
our
a
YouTube
lot.
channels, yeah, our YouTube channel's bio is we talk about things that qualified people should be talking about because we are not.
Yeah, that's smart. I suggest you guys stop bitching about Donald Trump so much. That would be my advice to you. What you should do is
I'm trying to take back my conservative movement, Paul.
correct,
That
and
I
you
think
should
has been stolen.
go for the root. Go for the root. Go for the root. Go after dispensation theology. That's what you guys should do. I will support you in your quest. All right, here, look at this. You're at a crossroads, and we do gotta wrap up here because I do gotta be up early tomorrow. What am I? I am you just started the game. You guys just started the game of online influence. You picked your characters. You classed into a monk role.
You are a wise wizard.
Congratulations. No, I'm a mild feudal lord at the first city you encounter, like Winterfell,
okay.
or what's the one in
Yep.
Skyrim? Winter.
No.
Winter Run.
Whiterun.
Whiterun.
Yeah.
I'm the lord of Whiterun.
Okay.
Well, maybe that's not the king. I'm not the king of the. I'm just I'm a small local lord. But compared to you, I'm fucking. Your destiny's in my hands. I give you a quest.
You can give us quests.
Now you've consulted with each other. You're like, yo, this lord, this guy's corrupt. He's supporting the evil emperor Trump. He seems like he's a good guy in some ways, but we can't really trust this guy, and you shouldn't. And my spy overhears you, and the next time we talk, I say, you're right. You shouldn't trust me. That makes you smart. That's why I trust you for this quest. The quest is this: destroy dispensation theology, and I will pay you in meme points.
Yes.
Okay. That's a game we're playing.
Right.
I will share your clips. I will retweet you. I will platform you to the degree that you pursue the truth in the direction that I would like you to pursue.
If we set our aims on Christian fundamentalism when it's out of whack,
destroy dispensation theology. That is what my quest to you. Now, listen, this is your game. I'm an NPC. Clearly, if I'm voting for Trump, I'm probably an NPC, right? Realistically, even though I'm not voting for Trump, I'm making the case for maybe voting for him.
Yes.
But I'm an NPC. You are not obligated to do what an NPC tells you. This is your game. But I am as the NPC, I'm telling you that I am tying reward medically to destroying dispensation theology. That's what I have to say.
I think that's a fantastic way to have our quest, Seth.
Yeah.
Where else can we go other than to take our Lord of the Whiterun and Enlightened Centrism? That was a good podcast. Thanks for coming on, Paul.
Yeah.
And
I appreciate it.
Chatting with us. Gideon Jigsaw has been asking you plenty of questions.
I know. I see it. Yeah, I suspect so.
Yeah, so that's good. I just wanted to shout him out for his participation. But yeah, thank you for conversation. Hope it was stimulating, especially the stuff we genuinely care about, which is how do we save people, Christianity.
Yeah, that in my opinion, that's just way more interesting. The Trump stuff, it's just someone posted a Trump thing on my subreddit. I'm just like, I don't care, really. I mean, I care in the degree to which it is a manifestation of the underlying things I do care about, but it's forest for the trees, and like a forest is made up of trees. You have to acknowledge the trees there.
Yes.
It's like, we have to it would be important to know what that border bill actually said, right? For either of us.
I agree. Yep.
So, but
and I don't
do I care enough?
And I'll
not necessarily.
Yeah. And I end with agreement saying, even if Trump were to get reelected, it's not going to be the end of America. It's not going to be the end of America democracy. I'm fearful for the next iteration that takes up the blueprint that he could potentially set. But it's not going to be Trump. I'm not pondering politics or in Destiny's realm of thinking with the Trump re-election, but that's why we're
entirely
here.
Fair.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate you.
Godspeed, guys.
Peace. Godspeed. Yep. Take care. Bye-bye.
You take his sign off from him? I think that's usually what he does. The Godspeed thing. He always ends off.
I said God bless. God bless. I didn't say Godspeed.
I thought you said Godspeed.
Oh, I hope I do that. I might have slipped.
Yeah, I thought.
Well, it was a parting greeting to him. I was using his own language. So
yeah, something he could understand.
He got his Godspeed in, bro. Stop hating.
Yeah.
All right, that was good. No, I don't have anything else to say.
I don't either.
Well, I don't know. I thought that was fun, and I do agree that
was really good.
Yeah, man, bro, we got to do. The politics is so stimulating and fun for me, but I do think that we eventually will need to enter the battle arena of some deeper theological discussions and fights, which is because in some ways I'm on the other end of that from Paul's perspective, where I'm like, when I have those discussions or debates, I'm like, does this really matter on your view of Jesus? I guess it does sometimes, but I don't know. You debate about Genesis and how old the earth is to the ends of the earth. Does it get you any closer to your belief about the Savior? I don't know. But I don't want to belabor the point unless you have anything else, Seth.
No, I just want to thank our record high 3 viewers. It's a big W. I don't know if one of them is Paul, but big W either way.
Yep. All right. Take care, Seth.
Yep, you too.
And catch you later. So long.